It's the show the establishment warned you about.
And welcome back to the Dr. Tommy Show. This is your friendly America's free market doctor, Dr. Tommy McElroy, here to entertain and enlighten you from the free state of Florida. And this is toward the end of the week here in Florida. And it's a return to the warmth that is we're accustomed to. And it is probably going to be the last gasp of winter, although sometimes you're proven wrong in March. There's times during March where you have cold snaps, and then suddenly spring break is a frigid event. But otherwise, things are going well here in the Free State. We're glad you're here to join us today, if you're listening in the Free State or not. And got a few things to go over today. Many things are having to do, no surprise, with COVID, but not everything. One thing I wanted to share about with you first of all is, I'm a big fan of Governor Desantis. I think that he's really shown a lot of courage in standing up to the media, similar way to the way Donald Trump does, except doing so with a little bit more tact, I guess you could say. Not being as confrontational, maybe a little bit safer for the suburban women voters who apparently have trouble voting for Donald Trump, and maybe some of the suburban men too. But either way, I don't know what to say though. There's this thing that happened at USF, which is our local university. I'm a graduate of USF, and I guess Governor Desantis was there, and he was speaking to the media there, and he had some high school students behind him. And here's what I just want to let you know what he had to say here. Here it goes.
You don't have to wear those masks. I mean, please take them off. Honestly, it's not doing anything. We got to stop with this COVID theater. So if you want to wear it, fine, but this is ridiculous.
And so he says...
all right, well, it's good to be at USF.
Yeah, so here he is. He's standing up there, and there's these kids behind him, and they're wearing these masks. And DeSantis walks up and he goes, "You do not have to wear those masks. I mean, please take them off. Honestly, it's not going to do anything, and we've got to stop this COVID theater. So if you want to wear it, fine, but this is ridiculous." So that is, I'm surprised by that, because that is, as this headline says from Newsweek, Ron DeSantis attacked by parents after a video of him bullying students goes viral. And so Ron DeSantis is here telling these students, you don't have to wear this mask. And this is taken by many as seeing as outright attack on these students and their rights to wear a mask. And one of the parents says his mother tells him to wear the mask. I tell him it's his choice. So he made that choice. And the governor has no right to tell no kid or no one that they can't wear a mask. He doesn't have that right. I think that's exactly what he has been saying. He's been saying that as far as masking is concerned, that you actually do have the right as a parent to let your kid wear or not wear a mask. But here it is, right here in Newsweek, reporting that he says he has been accused of, this is an epidemiologist who tweeted, which is the modern equivalent of writing a masterpiece novel. It says, epidemiologist Eric Fiegel-Ding tweeted, "Can't believe at Ron DeSantis governor would belittle and bully kids to take off their masks by calling them ridiculous." I don't think he called the mask ridiculous. I think he called the mask ridiculous, but he didn't call the students ridiculous. I don't think he was meaning that directly at them. But I think what happened here is you have the situation probably, and I don't know this for sure, but where Ron DeSantis was going to do this event, and they probably had like a walkthrough, and they had the governor up there, and they told the kids, okay, you're going to stand behind the governor, and then we're going to have a little press conference, and then maybe they're going to ask you a question or something like that, and then that's going to be the end of it. And so they probably did a dry run of it. And then when they went to do the real thing, these kids probably went up there and put the mask on, and that's probably what set the governor off, as you could hear towards the end of his soundbite. He was a little exasperated.
Wear those masks. I mean, please take them off. Honestly, it's not doing anything. We got to stop with this COVID theater. So if you want to wear it, fine, but this is ridiculous. All right. Well, it's good to be at USF.
Yeah, so here goes. He was exasperated, as you could tell. But like I said, surprising that the governor would attack these students like that, and a little bit taken aback by that. So, what else do we have here? This is some more stuff about the surgeon Florida politics here. This is a thing from Fox News. So we have had this Surgeon General here, Dr. I don't want to say his name wrong. His name is Dr. Ladapo. Okay, so he's a Surgeon General now. And this is the Florida State Senate confirmed Governor Ron DeSantis pick for Surgeon General Joseph A. Ladapo, who has vocally opposed mask mandates in schools, saying the data does not support such restrictions. This guy has been dragged through the mud. And it's interesting to note, what I think is interesting to note is Dr. Ladapo, who happens to be black, does not receive any credit at all for what he actually says. It says Ladapo, who DeSantis appointed in September after the former Surgeon General resigned, said that, quote, "There's a substantial gap between the quality of data out there supporting masking kids, yielding any benefit for kids whatsoever, factual." And what we're hearing from some of our public health leadership in other states and nationally. So he's saying, look, there's no data, which is true. There's no good data out there that says that there's been any changes at all with masking. I think masking has been proven to be completely, as a policy, completely having no impact at all. There's nowhere in the United States, nor is there anywhere in the world, where you could point to a situation where there's been masking rules either put in place or not put in place that made a difference in the number of COVID cases or the number of COVID deaths. And actually, we had this situation here at our local school district where there was COVID, there was masking requirements, and then this is earlier on in the year, and DeSantis fought this, but the local school districts, including Hillsborough County, which is a blue county, were causing the children to have to wear masks, and they were mandating it, and you couldn't get out of it. There was no parents opt out or nothing. This is what set off the whole mask mandate discussion. And so anyway, they had what they call it, a dashboard that we could look up, and there showed the masks. Actually, it just showed COVID cases. And then when they did the COVID cases were rising, right? So then they implemented a mask mandate. And shockingly, in the next 2 weeks, the COVID cases dropped a little bit. But then they went back, and they went higher than they've ever been, and then maybe they went back a little bit. But in the end of it, the curve was not significantly changed with or without masking. So we have Dr. Ladapo saying that putting a mask or something on your child's face, that's a parent's decision. It's not a school's decision. It's not a school board's decision. It's not a governor's decision. It's no one else's decision except for the parent, and the parents are being placed in these impossible situations. So here we are, black Surgeon General being criticized very heavily in the news for saying what is probably pretty much a generally understood thing now that masks do not change things. And then what does Charlie Crist weigh in? It says Representative Charlie Crist, a former governor and current candidate for 2022 gubernatorial race against DeSantis, attacked Ladapo after the confirmation. This is from a tweet. Like I said, I think this is a tweet. Breaking: DeSantis anti-vax Surgeon General nominee Dr. Joseph Ladapo was just confirmed as by the Florida Senate. I don't know what he was writing there. Floridians deserve our top doc to be a real medical professional dedicated to protect and serve our citizens. And that's not Dr. Ladapo. And I think that's, to me, very disrespectful to say that because of this policy decision that is not shared by Charlie Crist, who is not a physician, that Dr. Ladapo he's not our top doc. He's not a real medical professional, and he's not dedicated to serving and protecting our citizens. And actually, if the tables were turned, and Dr. Ladapo was serving in a Democrat administration, and it was a former governor, Democrat, now turned Republican representative who was criticizing that person without any real basis for it besides his opinion and calling him not a medical professional, I venture to say that might be called racism. But because it's coming from Charlie Crist, former Republican, former governor, now Democrat, now representative, and it's a Republican black Dr. Ladapo, then everything's cool. So don't worry about that. Everything's fine. So that was February 24. Okay, well, interesting. So Charlie Crist is not on board with Dr. Ladapo. But here we go. February 28. Democrat Charlie Crist suddenly decides it's time to, quote, move past the coronavirus. Representative Charlie Crist, Democrat Florida, who's vying to challenge Florida Governor Ron Desantis in this year's gubernatorial race in the Sunshine State, has suddenly decided it's time to move past the China coronavirus after over 1 year after DeSantis has already done so. This is from Breitbart. That's why they call it the Chinese coronavirus. Yeah, you know how that goes. Anyway, it says it's time to responsibly move past COVID, the Democrat and former Florida governor said, noting that Omicron is, quote, fading and vaccines are plentiful. With that, Crist said, we should be able to turn the page on this crisis for good. We may never eliminate COVID, but like flu, we can live with it without major disruption to our lives. Well, guess who the hell was saying that? Well, this time 2 years ago, I was not saying that. But shortly thereafter, myself and many people were saying that because it became very clearly evident that this was going to be like the flu. After the doomsday predictions by Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx and all the others failed to come to fruition about massive amounts of widespread death amongst everyone from the youngest ages to the oldest ages. After it became clear that this was a disease that was very aggressive in some patients and not very aggressive in others. And after it became clear that despite taking vaccines and despite taking measures such as social distancing and despite doing things like wearing masks and mandating masks and locking down students and everything else, despite all of that, the coronavirus numbers did not change. And it became obvious to some of us that this was going to be endemic. This was going to be like the flu. And hopefully it would be eventually like the flu in terms of mortality, meaning that the percent chance of you dying from the COVID virus would be similar to the flu, or greater, better even yet would be none at all, no COVID. But thanks to our friendly friends over in the CCP in their Wuhan lab, or thanks to some person who was indulging in the bat delicacy that they have in the wet markets there for probably 2,000, 3,000 years they've been doing. Coronavirus may have come from that bat too, although we haven't found that bat yet, or any of those bats actually to have that coronavirus. But either way, whether it came from a lab accidentally, most likely, or if it came from someone just chowing down on bats in the wet market, we have the coronavirus, and it would be nice if it would go away. But this destruction that's taken place over the last 2 years amongst people is just unforgivable. And when you have a guy like Charlie Crist who says, we may never eliminate COVID, but like the flu, we can live with it without a major disruption to our lives. For him to come out here and say this after 2 years, and after 4 days of just saying that this Surgeon General, Dr. Ladapo, was all wet and trying to say basically the same thing, like we have to use common sense, wearing masks. It's really it's kind of insulting to the intelligence if you're in that game of listening to politicians. And then Charlie Crist continues, I'm running so you'll be in charge again. You will have a governor who will work for the people to rebuild this economy, to rebuild our schools, and to unite us again. It's time to put political division behind us and to unite our state around our shared values. That's always the same boilerplate crap that they do whenever they do these addresses. They spend the first part of their speech tearing everybody apart on the other side, telling everybody how these people are animals, they're terrible people. Not a real professional, doesn't care about people. And then in the next sentence, he's like, "Oh, we're gonna run to unite everybody, and we're gonna be the ones to put everybody on the same page and move forward together, holding hands, singing Kumbaya. I remember Charlie Crist when I was a medical student, actually, just starting medical school. This nearly 20 years ago now. Charlie Crist was running for, I believe it was education commissioner or dog catcher or something, and he was there in Tampa with then Governor George W. Bush at a campaign event, and Governor Bush said, I want to introduce here Chalkboard Charlie, or I'm sorry, Chain Gang Charlie, because he was the Attorney General before that, and they call it, so his nickname was Chain Gang Charlie, because I think he may have brought chain gangs back for a period of time. I can't remember. But either way, Chain Gang Charlie, but now he's going to be called Chalkboard Charlie because he was running for education commissioner anyway. So he runs for that, and then he becomes governor. And then something funny happened. He got ambitious. He says, you know what, I'm governor, now I'm going to be senator. And I'm going to step away from the governor's mansion 4 years into this, and I'm going to go to be the senator. And it was expected that he would win. And he was the darling of the establishment, much the same way that any establishment politician is the darling. They just think they thought he was the guy. He was going to be the one to go be in Washington and fill the coffers of all of the Chamber of Commerce donators and all of the corporatists and everything. He was the guy. Well, and then what happened was a Tea Party happened, and then Marco Rubio happened. And Marco Rubio, who became a star essentially during that race after he trounced Charlie Crist on the mantle of the Tea Party, put Charlie Crist into a funk in which he has never recovered. And now it was so bad that during that primary, Charlie Crist not only stopped being a Republican and became an independent, eventually it was so bad that he was switched over to Democrat. So the trouncing that he took from Rick Scott later and then Marco Rubio in the first time is just too much. And now Charlie Crist is Democrat representative down here in the great state of Florida. What's up? So back to COVID news. This is from the WHO. 2 years ago, the WHO claimed COVID mortality was expected to be 3.4%. We called BS. Today, the Gateway Pundit was proven right again. This is from the Gateway Pundit. It says that based on recent data from the CDC, the U.S. is estimated to have around 140 million people who have contracted the China coronavirus. This is almost half the U.S. population. The true number of COVID infections in the United States may be double official figures, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports. The agency estimates there have been 140 million COVID-19 cases in the U.S. from the virus's arrival in America in early 2020 until now. This is another thing that bothers me. The whole time during this whole COVID situation, which was concentrating mostly on regulations, mandates, top-down government enforcement of policies that were going to make your life better. No time during this pandemic was there any real discussion about what is the things that we need to do to treat COVID? What are some of the risk factors besides not wearing a mask that make you susceptible? We never heard anything about vitamin D, which we talked about earlier in another podcast about how it's helpful potentially in helping with COVID. We never heard any of that stuff. But all we did hear about was the cases, and the deaths. So it's easy if you look at things and someone dies from COVID or with COVID, and you count that person. Some poor soul dies from COVID, and you count that person. And then you say, well, we need to find out how many people have died from COVID. The way that they were doing it with coronavirus was to say, all right, so this person died from coronavirus, or died with coronavirus, they count. We need to find out what is the denominator for this number. We have this number of people who have passed away. Now we need to find out what is the denominator for that number. And what do? They say, well, how many cases are there? And then how do they find the cases? So they say, well, how many people have tested positive for this disease? Now, you and I both know that that is not going to capture everyone. And I believe that the CDC's number, not because I'm smarter than the CDC, but because I have common sense, that they estimate 140 million cases, approximately double official figures. I think that's a huge underestimation. Why do I say that? Well, early on in this COVID thing, there were studies coming out that showed in small counties and things of this nature, and doing studies with antibodies, which is another thing. We never hear about antibodies. I'll get back to that. But anyway, they did these studies and they looked at antibodies. I think in one place they tested the sewage, and they were able to determine that a huge proportion of people in those communities had contracted COVID. And I saw some estimates, they said up to 40 times what was reported. Why do I go back to that? Well, when you hear a death rate, the numerator of the denominator, if the denominator is very small and the numerator is whatever it is, but the denominator is small, you're going to have a huge percentage potentially. But if you're not counting everybody and that denominator is artificially small, as what happened, then you can drive fear. You can tell people that the mortality is 3.4%. Mortality may be higher. You're going to die. Wear a mask. Stay home from your job. Quit your job. Lock down your kids. Lock down your family member. Wave at grandma and grandpa through the glass window. This is going to help us. Listen to Dr. Fauci. Don't listen to Dr. Birx because when she goes out with her family cavorting, she doesn't wear a mask, and then she told us to wear a mask. So it's all this is this gets back to this. Just I don't know if it's hubris or whatever the case is on the part of government to just be not completely truthful with the American people. And it's funny, it brings to mind one thing that they said recently. They were talking about, and I don't have this paper in front of me, but another headline recently was about how COVID cases. There were, the death, the amount of people who died in the hospitals from COVID. They had these numbers, and the amount of people who died who were vaccinated, they didn't release all the numbers. They released the numbers for people who weren't vaccinated who were vaccinated in certain groups, but certain groups they didn't. And the reason they didn't was because they said they didn't want those numbers to be misinterpreted. And so basically it wasn't safe for public consumption. It hadn't been run through the memory hole machine yet, and it was apparently contained information that made it look like, well, maybe the vaccines aren't as useful as we say they are. But it just really eye-opening about how you cannot trust what you hear without verifying it yourself, and hopefully someone else is working on a way to verify things that are told to us by people like the CDC and Dr. Fauci and the WHO. I think in this time and what we're living now, I don't think we've ever seen as much erosion of the trust of Americans toward the institutions of what we would usually consider very astute. So, for instance, the CDC, the FBI, the CIA, all of those are institutions, the Justice Department in general, that were thought to be beyond reproach. They are there to do their job. They're the professionals. And certainly there are very many good professionals amongst that. But the agency, the mission of the agency has changed. And the mission of the agency of the CDC for this past year has been different than it would have been for, let's say, polio. There was a political motivation to coronavirus that has not been seen previously, at least by myself. And the same goes for the FBI and the CIA and all these groups. Is if you look at the things that have been done, for instance, the January 6th rioters, treated completely different than the rioters in Oregon or the rioters in Minnesota. They are treated completely different, and it's by the Justice Department. Back to immunizations. Oh, yes. So one thing that bothers me about this COVID is that we never talk about immunizations. We never talk about antibodies after immunization. What is the import of getting a vaccine if you already have sufficient antibodies produced by your body to fight off a potential antigen or offensive agent, such as a virus? So we are told that we have to do repeated boosters. You don't have to get tested. You just get the booster when it's your turn. When they tell you your turn, if it's your third booster, you get your third booster. If it's your fourth booster, you get your fourth booster. And we never talk about what are the antibodies, which is a very simple test. Very simple test to do. Antibody testing you can get done, and within 2 days you have the results. So it's not like it's something where you have to send it away and wait 6 weeks, and in the meantime you're at home worrying, wearing a mask, hunkered down because you don't know if you have enough antibodies or not, and you want to go to that concert. You can get this done, but we never talk about that. Dr. Fauci is, at least a million times he's been on TV, I've never heard him talk about it, although I don't watch him. Just something else. What else is going on? This Ukraine business, Russia invading Ukraine is a very bizarre thing to me. I grew up, when I was a kid, Iraq war started, the first war, the Persian Gulf War, when Iraq went into Kuwait, much the same way that Russia has gone into Ukraine to take their stuff, to take them over, to absorb them, to make them the long-lost child that has now been reacquainted with its parents. So Russia taking over Ukraine when I was a kid. Iraq took over Kuwait. And what happened then? Well, we went to war. And we kicked Saddam Hussein's ass out of Kuwait. And we kicked his ass all the way up to Baghdad. And then we just stopped. And then for many years, probably a decade, we did no-fly zones. We did all these things. We had inspectors. We had UN people in there with their helmets going in there and checking for WMD and all these other things. And then you all know what happened again. And then, the CIA, again, back to the CIA, said, they have WMD, let's go into Iraq. And so we did. Anyway, but now, if you look at the news coverage now, we have Russia rolling into Ukraine. And this whole thing is just odd. It is really strange. The lack of shock, I guess, is the biggest thing. The lack of, I've never seen a war predicted so easily and choreographed almost, it seems. So we have, the President of the United States telling us for weeks before that Russia is going to invade Ukraine. Russia is going to invade Ukraine. And then Russia was saying, we're not going to invade Ukraine. And then next thing you know, Russia has invaded Ukraine. And here we are, they're still going, and Ukraine is still standing, knowing that if Russia wanted to, they could take Ukraine over in one day. So what is the deal with Ukraine? What is going on? Is Russia's goal to take over Ukraine? And if so, why didn't they do it the same way that we took over Iraq, which would be probably just as easy for the Russians to do, if not easier, because they actually live next door. It'd be like us trying to take over Mexico. I think we could do it pretty quickly. Not that we would ever do that, but I'm just saying. We beat Iraq back in a matter of time with shock and awe. And Russia could do the exact same thing if they wanted to. And I'm glad they haven't, because that would be awful. I feel so, when I see this thing on TV, I just think of those children, and I think of my own children, and think about how frightening it would be if you were being invaded, attacked, and you did nothing. And here you are being bombed. So I don't know what this Ukraine situation is and what the Russia situation. I'm very cynical about what is the end game. Who is benefiting is the big thing. Who is making money off this? And I know one thing's for sure is, and many people have said this, is Putin would not have done this if Donald Trump was in office. And why do I say that? It's just because Donald Trump has that factor of you just don't know whether or not how he's going to react. You know how Joe Biden's going to react. You know what a limp-wristed response you're going to get from Joe Biden. But Donald Trump, you don't know how he's going to react. And I read an article, and this doesn't have a recording or anything, but there was an article that said that Putin actually met with Trump and was talking to Trump and said, you can't take Ukraine. I know you want it, but you can't have it. And if you do take Ukraine, I'm going to hit Moscow. And Putin was there, and he kind of laughed and said, no way. And then Trump said, all those beautiful turrets blown to pieces, or something to that effect, talking about the turrets in Moscow that was designed by an architect who was subsequently blinded. back in the days of the czars. But either way, yeah, so you don't know if this guy's for real. And there was a time when Trump was having dinner or dessert with Xi down in Mar-a-Lago, and they were having dessert. In the middle of dessert, Trump took off time to go announce that he had just bombed Syria. And then he came back and finished his dessert. And it's kind of just, you just don't know with that guy. But with Biden, you know what's going to go on. And how do you know what's going to go on? Because they're fundamentally unserious. This is Pete Buttigieg on Keystone Pipeline. This is from Breitbart. Pete Buttigieg on Keystone Pipeline amid Ukraine invasion. Quote, or not quote, we don't want, quote, permanent solutions to short-term problems. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said Wednesday on MSNBC's The 11th Hour, probably gets as many views as I get, that to combat oil prices skyrocketing amid the Russian invasion of Ukraine, President Joe Biden did not want to authorize the Keystone Pipeline. So they're saying, Russia's invaded Ukraine. You're telling us it's going to hurt. You warned us, and you feel our pain, and yet you're still not going to authorize the Keystone Pipeline, which would give us, once again, on the road to energy independence like we had before. And so this shows you how fundamentally unserious not only is Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden, but just in general, how unserious the federal government is and how incapable the federal government is to solving problems that really matter. He added, Buttigieg said, look, the president has said all the options are on the table, but we need to make sure that they're not galloping after permanent solutions to an immediate short-term problem where more strategic and tactical actions in the short term can make a difference. So he says, like you have with a strategic reserve, which exists partly in order to respond to situations like this. So in Pete's mind, we don't need to be galloping to solutions because this is only going to be a short-term problem. Acting as if, though, the reason gas is high is because Russia invaded Ukraine. This is another myth that the media has been trying to push, which is BS. And then he adds, this is the stupidest part. He added, the president has laid policies that are going to help cushion the impacts of any volatility in energy markets in the future by building up much more of a diversified and homegrown energy base for this country. He means solar power. He means windmills. Now you tell me how in the hell's a windmill or solar power is going to help me in the short term. And he's talking about not galloping towards permanent solutions for short-term problems. Well, this is not a short-term solution that he's talking about. And it's going to, in my mind, never be a solution. I was trying to blow leaves off the other day, and I have a lithium-ion battery leaf blower, and it works very well. Actually, I love it. It works better than the gasoline leaf blower I used to have. And I went to go blow the leaves off, and sure enough, the battery was dead. So I was, that sucks. So then I went and put the battery on, and we had to go somewhere, so I didn't even bother. That whole day, the leaves just sat on the patio. I didn't even get to do it. Next day, battery was fully charged, went out and hooked it up to the leaf blower, and then away went the leaves. Bloom, gone. Just like that. And I was thinking, well, this is all right, because you know what? The battery got charged. I blew off the leaves. Now, picture yourself traveling cross country, screaming kids. You want to get to New York in time for some important event. Now you have to park your car and you have to charge it. And if you have some type of special supercharger, it can do it in 45 minutes. Otherwise, you're looking at several hours. Who the hell wants to do that instead of just stopping at the gas station, putting gas into your car, and then leaving in 5 minutes? And they'll say, well, it's to help the earth. Okay, so you're telling me that the energy you put into your car from the electrical pump, that energy came from solar power and wind. It did not. It came from fossil fuels. It came from natural gas, most likely, or coal, and some percentage came from renewable energy. But just back to this Pete Buttigieg, he goes, we don't want to gallop after permanent solutions to short-term problems. It's completely illustrative of how they just don't get it. A few more things here. Oh, this is, I'm as, what's the word for it? Cynical about social media as anybody, But here it is. This has really destroyed, I wanted to believe, but this has really destroyed my belief in social media as a good for society. This is from WFLA, our local news local 970 WFLA AM station. TikTok star busted after shoes he wore in videos were linked to robberies. A Detroit TikTok star accused of committing a string of armed robberies was nabbed thanks to an eagle-eyed fan of his videos. The FBI received an anonymous tip pointing them to the TikTok page of 22-year-old Chozen Hannah. His page has nearly 150,000 followers, and his videos have amassed 1.6 million views. After viewing another video recorded on September 24, 21, they had enough evidence to secure a warrant. So they looked at this video and they saw this guy, and it looked like the guy they were looking for. And it says the video features Terrell Hannah dancing shirtless, but the FBI agents focused on his white Nike sneakers. They noticed that they looked similar to the shoes worn by the suspect and had distinct red accents on the heel. Officials say that Terrell Hannah robbed the same 7-Eleven twice, a gas station, and a smoke shop between October 21 and January 22. So this man, this poor guy, had all of these followers on social media and TikTok, and here he is, nabbed because of his sneakers. Another reason not to buy Nike. This is surprising to me. This is from Breitbart. This is Google drops employee vaccine mandate. So the vaccine mandate's back to this thing that we've been saying, or I've been saying, about what is the wrong response that we've had to COVID. And one of the wrong responses we've had to COVID is to say the vaccine is so important that everyone should get it. And if you don't get it, you're going to lose your job and your family can't eat, and you're gonna get kicked out of your house, or just bend the knee and do it. And so this has been, throughout all companies across the board. And as we know, Joe Biden tried to do this with OSHA, and it got shut down by the Supreme Court, notwithstanding the medical opinions of Justice Breyer and Kagan and Sotomayor. But anyway, so we get back to this vaccine mandate, which was just the key to getting us out of this. Joe Biden told us, well, first he told us if we wore a mask all we did have to do was wear a mask and COVID would be over in 100 days. And I guess we didn't do that good enough. So then he said, if everybody just got vaccinated, then it'd be over. And then a huge percentage of people got vaccinated, and COVID numbers went through the roof, and it was just looking more and more bleak. And then suddenly, so you have Google, which if you were to have a corporation that is the most obedient to whatever the current agenda is of the establishment, that's Google. Tech giant Google is reportedly dropping many of its coronavirus restrictions, including its vaccine mandate for U.S. employees. CNBC reports that Google is removing many of the coronavirus restrictions, including testing requirements, social distancing, masks, and mandatory vaccines for all U.S. employees. However, get to the end. However, notes from Ratcliffe stated the unvaccinated employees who are approved to enter offices will still need to follow additional protocols like testing and wearing a mask. So they don't want to let go of it. They don't want to let go of it. I can tell you from experience that the chances of you getting coronavirus, if you have a mask, if you're vaccinated, is not all too different from getting coronavirus if you're unvaccinated. And I can tell you that from experience. This is the last thing I wanted to talk about. This is kind of cool. This is from yahoo.com. It says, this is from February 15th, so a couple of weeks ago. But anyway, I don't know if you guys heard, but there was a pig heart that was transplanted into someone recently. And the man's name was David Bennett. And the pig heart was made from this special gene editing technique where they were able to take away genes from the pig heart that would make it be attacked by a human host. So here we are. It says, a marvel of modern science, David Bennett continues to defy odds, surviving more than a month after his pig heart transplant. On Sunday, Bennett sat up in bed and meekly sang America the Beautiful as somebody belted out their rendition prior to the Super Bowl, which I didn't see. Bennett, who received a genetically modified pig heart during a transplant on January 7th, continues his slow recovery at the University of Maryland Medical Center. And this is from the surgeon. The heart is doing great. We have several cardiologists trying to find any fault in it, but they have not been able to, said the lead surgeon, Dr. Mohammed M. Muhaddin, I think. professor of surgery and director of cardiac xenotransplantation program at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. The heart is contracting vigorously as it should. It has shown no signs of rejection. Isn't that amazing? It's really cool. So many people in this country need hearts, need anything, livers, hearts. And this is really great that they're able to do this. This is, some of the things that make me still happy about being in medicine is seeing things like this. When you have things like COVID and see the stupid ways at which we respond to COVID and the people in charge, the stupid things they do. And then you kind of get, and then if you're in the business of insurance and you're dealing with insurance and you're getting beat down by them and bureaucrats, and if you're in some big box corporate environment, you're getting beat down by people with masters of communications and masters of healthcare telling you how to practice medicine. So all that stuff can bring you down, but then stuff like this that makes you feel good. Decline. And it says, Bennett had terminal heart disease and several medical centers had determined he was ineligible for a human transplant. Doctors said his new transplant is a breakthrough because the donor pig has undergone gene editing to remove a specific type of sugar from its cells thought to be responsible for previous organ rejections. Pig organs are considered suitable for transplant in humans because they are about the same size and shape. And I think that they can do this with kidneys, or they're working on doing this with kidneys. And, maybe a pancreas too. That'd be great for diabetics. When I was in residency, there were some children, pediatrics, who were getting pancreas transplants because they were born, with brittle diabetes. And it's very sad that these poor children had to suffer from the very beginning. And it'd be great to see if there was a way to alleviate a lot of the suffering in this world, albeit at the expense of a pig, which won't make very many of you animal lovers out there happy. But that being said, thank you for joining us this week. If you want to hear more Dr. Tommy Show, go to drtommy.com/podcast. There are some things there, hidden things, not hidden, on the sidebar, little special things for you to save money. And one of them is use Pure Talk because it will save you money. We save greater than $50 a month on, greater than 50%, which is equivalent to $50 on our cell phone bills for the business here. And we did that simply by switching to Pure Talk. You can go on to drtommy.com/podcast. And then if you go into the sidebar there's some links. And if you click on a Pure Talk link, you'll be taken away to a special deal. Also, there's Athletic Greens, which is something I am glad to be taking now for was going on 2 weeks. No, sorry, going on 2 months. 2 months. This first month, we're into the second month. Anyway, it's a supplement that you can take. It's green. It doesn't taste like a chocolate shake, but it is palatable after a while. And it's one of those things that I was willing to try to see if it would help with energy, and I think it has. And I think it's really helped with some leg pain I was having too. Why? I don't know. Just maybe it's a coincidence. And then lastly, there's Atlas MD for all of you physicians out there listening who are in the business of not taking insurance, who are direct primary care, concierge medicine doctors. If you want to switch to Atlas MD, you can do so risk-free by getting a free trial until you start up. And if you click on the link there, it will give you not only the 1 month free, it will give you an additional month free. So you can get several $100s worth of free membership fees through Atlas MD, which is atlas.md. And just go to drtommy.com/podcast, and they're there on the sidebar. Until next time, we look forward to seeing you again. And if you want to tune into something that's going to be great for you to watch with your family, although it's very difficult to watch, it's very heart-wrenching. Watch 1883. Highly recommended. 1883 on Paramount Plus, and you won't regret it. So thank you for joining us, and until next time, bye-bye.